"Do not open the coffin, for death will strike with its wings anyone who dares to disturb us. Death will strike anyone who disturbs the peace of the king." This phrase was written on the wall of the tomb of King Tutankhamun. The English archaeologist Howard Carter discovered it for the first time in 1922. At that time, Carter returned to Lord George Edward Stanhope, the financial backer of the search project, and told him, "I have finally discovered something great in Luxor." He asked him to come and see for himself. When Carter was in Luxor, he had a golden canary bird in a cage. Everything was normal. Carter was standing with his assistant talking when they heard a loud scream that shook the place. They looked and found a cobra inside the cage with its mouth open, approaching the bird. Carter ran to the cage and killed the snake, but unfortunately, the bird was already dead. At that moment, his assistant looked at him in fear and said, "The curse has begun." This might have been the first time the words "Curse of the Pharaohs" were said. Entering the tomb, Lord George Edward, the project's financier, and Howard Carter arrived in Cairo. They went together to Tutankhamun's tomb, broke down the doors, and entered with their assistants. They explored the tomb and saw everything inside. The tomb was full of gold, jewels, statues, perfumes, and the famous golden mask of Tutankhamun. After they reached the king's stone coffin and opened it, they found a second coffin inside. When they opened the second coffin, they found a third coffin made of gold inside. When they opened the third coffin, they found Tutankhamun lying inside peacefully. The strange thing was that the tomb was completely intact. Everything was in its place. Carter was the first person to enter this place in 33 centuries. They set a specific day to open the tomb and show it to the whole world. This was in November 1922. People and scientists from all over the world gathered with Carter to attend the big day. Strange events and the curse on that same day. Something strange happened. Dr. Mohammed Zakaria, who was participating in the project, got a very strange illness and died. Also on the same day, the electricity went out across all of Cairo. The press started working, linking Dr. Zakaria's death to the power cut, saying it was an act ordered by the great King Tutankhamun. To make matters worse, Lord George himself, the financial backer, was bitten by a mosquito, got blood poisoning afterwards, and also died. In addition, all the workers who entered the tomb for the first time got respiratory diseases and a strange fever, and they all died suddenly without warning. A series of strange events began to happen. The words written on the tomb wall seemed to be true. The phrase "Curse of the Pharaohs" spread all over the world, to the point where rich people who had bought expensive pharaonic artifacts started getting rid of them for fear of the curse. The issue didn't stop there. The media, both European and Arab, did something very strange. They linked unrelated long-term events to the Curse of the Pharaohs. For example, if someone visited the tomb at the opening and died 10 years later, the media would say it was the curse. This happened with many people whose causes of death were logical and known, but the media insisted on linking them to the curse for no reason. Not only that, but great novelists like Arthur Conan Doyle, author of the famous Sherlock Holmes character, was one of the people who talked about the curse and mentioned it often in his books and novels. This contributed to the media's interest in the topic, along with hundreds of movies and novels written about the curse, and of course, thousands of books sold on the subject. The topic was just a media sensation. The big question, a very important point in this story, is that no one had heard of the Curse of the Pharaohs until we discovered Tutankhamun's tomb. Before that, people didn't know anything called the Curse of the Pharaohs. After Tutankhamun's tomb, nothing strange happened in any other tomb to suggest a curse. So what's the deal? In short, people said the phrase "Curse of the Pharaohs" for the first time after discovering Tutankhamun's tomb and seeing the strange accidents that happened at that time. This phrase wasn't said before or after, and this is a very important point. Who was Tutankhamun? Who was Tutankhamun, and why is he so famous? In reality, Tutankhamun was a young king who died at 19. Strangely, he had no major historical influence and didn't contribute anything significant to Egyptian civilization. By the way, his picture is on the Egyptian pound. So why is a person with no major historical value so famous? The reason for Tutankhamun's fame is that his tomb reached us completely intact after 33 centuries, with everything in its place. This was the first time this happened in the history of discovering pharaonic tombs. The tomb was filled with thousands of artifacts, to the extent that archaeologists spent over 17 years examining its contents. Solving the mystery, the most important point to understand the mystery of the curse is to look at the life of King Tut, the young king whose name is linked to the curse. If you think about it, you'll ask a logical question. Tutankhamun was a young, unimportant boy. If there really was a curse of the pharaohs that affected anyone entering tombs, wouldn't it make more sense for the curse to be on the tombs of great kings like Ramses II or Amenhotep III? Scientists entered their tombs, took samples, conducted research, and nothing happened to anyone. Add to that, when the archaeologist Giovanni Battista Belzoni discovered the tomb of King Seti I before Tut's tomb, its contents, the gold, the body, the wrapping paper, were taken and displayed in an exhibition in London, and everything was fine, no curse. Also, when they entered the tomb of King Amenhotep II in 1898 and Queen Tai, archaeologists entered more than 63 tombs of famous kings and queens, and phrases like "whoever enters this tomb or does evil to it will have the crocodile as their enemy in the water, and scorpions and snakes as their enemies on land" were written on the walls. Scientists entered these tombs, and nothing happened to anyone. Why look far? We go in and out of King Khufu's tomb as if it's our own house, and nothing happens to anyone. Even though King Khufu was the richest and most powerful of the pharaohs, we haven't seen any curse in his tomb or his pyramid. So if all these great kings didn't have a curse, it doesn't make sense for a 19-year-old boy with no historical achievements to have a cursed tomb. So what's the secret? The real secret is that priests from ancient times used to spread poisons in the corners of the tombs, on the foundations, and everywhere. These poisons are very potent and can preserve their effect for thousands of years. They also distributed toxic fungi around the coffins and released certain types of deadly bacteria into the air. All this was for fear of thieves and to prevent anyone from breaking into the tomb and stealing what was inside. The pharaohs were very skilled in poisons and were among the first civilizations to cultivate poisonous plants. Is there scientific proof? Yes. When scientists took samples from inside Tutankhamun's tomb and from inside the coffin, they found very high levels of formaldehyde, ammonia, and hydrogen sulfide, all of which are toxic gases that can kill a person if inhaled. Furthermore, experiments concluded that the pharaohs used toxic radioactive materials for preserving and purify bodies. Indeed, a biology professor from Cairo University's medical school at the time examined one of the tomb explorers and found he had a respiratory inflammation caused by specific fungi found in the tombs of ancient Egyptians. Finally, and most importantly, because these tombs were closed for thousands of years, the air inside became stale. Due to the lack of air renewal inside the tomb, it's easy for anyone entering for the first time to contract serious respiratory diseases. After the Tutankhamun tomb incident, a rule was established for all archaeologists not to rush into closed tombs and to let the air renew first, because this was the mistake made by the people who entered Tut's tomb, which led to them contracting chronic diseases that made people think the cause was a curse. Dr. Mohammed Zakaria, whom we talked about at the beginning, research confirmed that he was wounded by a poison tool inside the tomb, and that was the cause of his death. By the way, the electricity did not go out in Cairo that day. That was just a claim by the newspapers and media. The Egyptian Antiquities Authority has stated in many meetings and confirmed in numerous statements that the curse of the pharaohs is just a modern myth with no basis in truth. It's very strange that Howard Carter himself, the man who discovered the tomb, had nothing happen to him and lived until he was 64 years old. If there was a curse, as they say, Carter should have been the first one affected, since he simply discovered the tomb. False journalism and media, and people who wanted to sell books and make blockbuster movies, are the main reason for the spread of this superstition, in addition to the lack of awareness among many people over the years. However, this does not negate that God Almighty mentioned in the Quran that the ancient Egyptians were skilled in magic, meaning it's possible that some sorcerers used jinn to protect some tombs. But is this the reason for killing those who enter or not? This is a question no one can answer.